The stranger's kindness. The city of Daynar was alive with noise. Neon lights glowed on every wall, airships hummed above, and thousands of voices mixed into a loud wave that filled the streets. Stalls were packed close together. Merchants shouted about their goods. Glowing fruits, polished weapons, and strange alien jewelry. It was a city of wealth for some and misery for many. In the middle of this restless crowd walked a small alien child. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes clouded and empty. She was blind. Yet she carried a small basket as if she were on an important mission. Her tiny feet tapped against the stone. Her hands stretched out to feel the walls and stalls, but she still stumbled every few steps. People brushed past her, pushing her aside without care. Some laughed quietly. Others muttered insults under their breath. In that society, weakness was not forgiven. The child dropped her basket once, the bread inside rolling onto the dirty ground. She bent down, her hands shaking as she searched. A group of children laughed at her, pointing at her fumbling hands. None of the adults stopped them. No one offered help. To them, she was not a child, but a burden. Then, among the endless flow of people, a stranger stopped. He was not from Daynar. His figure stood taller than most, his skin a different shade, his features unlike the others. He was human. His name was Marcus. He wore a simple jacket marked with travel stains. His boots were heavy from long roads. His pack was filled with strange tools that clinked as he moved. Marcus had seen many worlds, but what he saw here made him pause. He watched the blind girl crawl on her knees, searching for the bread as the laughter of others stung her like knives. His heart tightened. He had seen cruelty before, but never so casual, never so accepted. Without a word, he stepped forward. His shadow fell over the child. She froze, expecting another cruel voice, another push, but instead, she felt a gentle hand lift the bread from the ground and place it in her small basket. The girl lifted her pale eyes, though she could not see him. Who is there?" she whispered. Her voice was small, almost afraid. "Just a traveler," Marcus said softly. His tone was calm, steady, and kind. The girl clutched her basket tightly. "You gave it back to me," she said, her voice shaking. "No one ever helps me." Marcus sat on one knee so his voice was closer to her. "Then today is different," he replied. "You are not alone." From the side of the street, whispers began. "Look at that human," one merchant scoffed. "Helping the blind one," another laughed. "Strange creatures. They waste their time on hopeless things." But Marcus ignored them. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small piece of dried fruit. He placed it gently into her hand. "Eat," he said simply. Her fingers trembled as she held it, and tears formed in her blank eyes. She bit into it slowly, savoring something she had not tasted in a long time. Kindness. "Why?" she asked, her small voice breaking. "Why would you do this for me?" Marcus looked at her carefully. His eyes were steady. "Because no one else will," he answered, "and because it is right." The child lowered her head. Her thin shoulders shook. She whispered, "They call me broken. They say I will never see. I am cursed." For a moment Marcus was silent. The noise of the city roared around them, but he heard only her words. Then he leaned closer. His voice dropped into a whisper. "What if I told you," he said, "that you are not broken? What if I told you that I can help you see?" The girl gasped. Her lips parted, her fingers tightening around the basket. That is not possible," she stammered. "No one can fix me." Marcus smiled faintly, though she could not see it. "I am an engineer," he said. "I build things, I fix things. I make the impossible real. I have seen machines heal wounds. I have seen crystals power entire cities. If all that is possible, then so is this." The girl's voice trembled. "You mean you can give me sight?" "Maybe not today," Marcus replied. "But if you trust me, if you let me try, then yes, I believe I can." For the first time in her life, hope touched her heart. She did not know this man. She could not even see his face, yet his words felt different. They were not pity, not cruelty. They carried weight, they carried belief. She nodded slowly. Then I trust you, she whispered. Marcus stood and gently took her hand. His grip was strong but gentle, guiding her carefully through the crowd. Behind them, voices rose again, louder now. The human is making promises, someone sneered. Foolish, another said. Dangerous, another whispered, but Marcus kept walking, leading the blind girl away from the noise, into the quieter streets at the edge of the city. Neither of them knew that hidden eyes were watching. In the shadows of the market, cloaked figures followed their steps. Their eyes glowed faintly as they whispered into secret devices. The human has spoken of restoring sight to the blind, one said. If true, this changes everything, and so, with a single act of kindness, the path of the human and the blind child began, a path that would soon shake the universe itself. The impossible. Promise Marcus led the blind child through the narrow streets that twisted like veins through the lower city. The noise of the market faded slowly behind them, replaced by the distant hum of generators and the faint rattle of pipes that ran beneath the cracked stone. The child walked carefully, her small hand clutched tightly in his. At first she hesitated, unsure of this stranger who spoke of impossible things, but with each step she took beside him, a fragile seed of trust began to grow inside her heart. They reached a quiet district on the edge of the city, where abandoned warehouses stood like sleeping giants. Marcus pushed open the rusted door of one building and guided her inside. The air was filled with the smell of oil, dust, and the faint crackle of energy coils. Strange tools and half-finished devices covered the tables, glowing scraps of metal and crystal scattered in piles. This was his workshop, a place that had seen both success and failure, creation and frustration. Marcus helped her sit on a bench near the work table. He set down his heavy pack and began pulling out strange instruments. Wires, lenses, crystal fragments, circuits made from both human design and alien salvage. The child tilted her head, listening to the clatter. "What is this place?" she asked softly. "My workshop," Marcus replied. "It is where I fix broken things. It is where I try to build what others say cannot be built." She held her basket close to her chest, her empty eyes staring into the void. "And you think you can fix me?" she whispered. Her voice was heavy with doubt. Marcus looked at her firmly. "You are not broken," he said. "You were simply born without sight. But sight can be given, it can be built. I believe that with the right tools, I can make something to help you see." The child trembled at his words. In her short life, she had never been told such a thing. To her people, blindness was a curse, a flaw, something to be hidden in the shadows. The idea that it could be changed felt unreal. "But why would you do this for me?" she asked. "I am no one. I have nothing to give you." Marcus paused, his hands moving carefully as he sorted through crystals. His voice was steady. "Because you deserve a chance. Because everyone deserves to live without being cast aside. I do not need payment. Your trust is enough." Her lips parted, but no words came. Her chest rose and fell quickly as emotion tightened her throat. For so long she had been invisible, and now this strange human spoke to her as if she mattered, as if her life was worth saving, for hours. Marcus worked while the child listened. His fingers moved across wires and metal, his eyes sharp and focused. He explained little pieces to her as he went, not because she needed to know, but because he wanted her to feel included. He showed her how a crystal could focus light, how a lens could bend it, how a circuit could translate signals. She could not see, but she listened intently, storing each sound and word in her memory. As the night deepened, she asked softly, "What if you fail?" Marcus stopped, lifting his eyes from the glowing device. "Then I will try again," he answered. Failure only means the path was wrong. Not that the goal is impossible. His words struck her heart like fire. No one had ever spoken of failure in such a way. In her world, failure meant weakness. Weakness meant shame. But here was someone who believed that trying again was strength. Outside, the quiet streets were not so empty. Shadows moved across rooftops, silent watchers peering through small devices. Their reports flowed quickly across hidden networks. "The human is working on something," one spy whispered into a comm. "He claims he can give sight to the blind child. If this is true, it could disrupt the entire order." Back inside, Marcus finally set aside his tools. His eyes were tired, his hands marked with grease, but his expression carried determination. He looked at the child and said firmly, "I cannot promise when, I cannot promise how long, but I will not stop until you can see." The child's breath caught. She lowered her head, her fingers gripping the edge of the bench. Slowly, carefully, she whispered, "Then I promise I will wait. I promise I will trust you." Marcus reached out and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "That is all I ask," he said at that moment. Something invisible bound them together, his promise to create the impossible, and her promise to believe in it. Neither of them knew that beyond the walls of the workshop, powerful forces were already stirring. The council had heard the whispers, and in their secret halls the leaders debated in silence. Some feared the human's invention, others hungered for it, and soon their eyes would turn fully upon Marcus and the blind child. But inside that quiet workshop, none of this mattered yet. For the first time in her life, the child felt hope. For the first time in years, Marcus felt purpose, and as the tools hummed and crystals glowed softly, the impossible promise took its first breath, a promise that would soon shake not just the city of Danar, but the entire galaxy, the vision device. The following days turned into a cycle of endless work. Marcus barely slept as he poured his focus into the strange mix of human technology and alien parts that cluttered his workshop. The blind child, whose name he now learned was Lyra, stayed close by, listening to the hum of his tools, the crackle of energy coils, and the occasional sigh he let out when a piece did not fit as he hoped. The air inside the workshop grew heavy with the smell of soldered wires, warm metal, and glowing crystal fragments that shimmered faintly with power. Lyra had never known such a place before. To her, the sounds were like a strange music, the taps of metal, the soft scratching of Marcus writing notes, the occasional spark that made her flinch before his calm voice soothed her. She had grown up with silence and harsh words, so the rhythm of his work and the patience in his tone were almost magical. Sometimes she asked questions, and Marcus answered each one carefully, explaining how light bent, how signals could be changed, how vision itself was nothing more than the brain translating what the eyes sent. She could not see any of it, but she imagined, and that imagination gave her hope. Marcus, however, carried a storm inside. He knew what he was attempting bordered on madness. To build a device that could grant vision to one who was born blind was not simply difficult. It was revolutionary. It could change lives across entire worlds. It could tear down centuries of belief in curses, in weakness, in destiny, and because of that, he knew others would want to stop him. He could already feel the unseen eyes that lingered outside the workshop at night. He said nothing to Lyra, but his instincts warned him that their time was limited. One evening, after hours of careful work, Marcus finally placed the last crystal lens into its socket. The device in his hands was small but beautiful. It looked like a thin visor, shaped to rest gently over the eyes. Its frame was crafted from alien alloy, light but strong, while human microcircuits pulsed within. At the center of the visor, two faint lights glowed softly. Like the first spark of dawn, Marcus held it in his hands and exhaled deeply. It was fragile, untested, but it was ready. "Lyra," he said quietly. His voice carried both excitement and fear. "It is time." The girl turned her head toward him, her clouded eyes wide. Her small hands clutched the edge of the bench as if afraid to move. "Time for what?" she asked. Her voice trembled, for though she had trusted him, the idea of sight still felt like a dream too big to touch. Marcus knelt in front of her and placed the visor gently in her hands. "This," he said, "is the device. It may not be perfect. It may not work the way I hope, but if it does, then you will see." Her fingers traced its smooth edges, her breath quickening. "See?" she whispered. "You mean, truly see?" "Yes," Marcus answered softly. "Truly." Her throat tightened as she tried to speak, but no words came. For a long moment she only sat still, trembling. Then she slowly allowed him to guide the visor onto her face. Marcus adjusted the straps gently, careful not to hurt her. The soft lights from the visor glowed brighter as it connected with her. A faint hum filled the room, and then silence. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Lyra's face was tense. Her clouded eyes hidden behind the visor, Marcus felt the weight of failure pressing against his chest. He wondered if he had been a fool, if the impossible was truly beyond his reach. But then, slowly, her lips parted, her body stiffened, and her breath caught sharply. I see light," she whispered. Her voice was so soft it was almost a prayer. "It is blurry, but it is there, shapes, colors. I see." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, relief washing through him like fire and water all at once. He had succeeded, at least partly. He opened his eyes to watch as Lyra lifted her hands slowly before her face. Her fingers stretched wide, her lips trembling. For the first time, she was not touching the world to know it. She was looking at it. Her laugh burst out suddenly, broken and breathless, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I see my hands," she cried. "I see the light on the wall. I see you. Blurry, but I see you." Her voice shook, rising higher, filling the workshop with a sound Marcus would never forget. The sound of joy born from despair. Marcus smiled faintly. But deep in his chest he felt a heavy shadow. He knew that this moment was not safe. Already whispers had spread through the city. Already spies had reported to the council. And now that the device had worked, there would be no turning back. Outside, in the darkness beyond the workshop's cracked windows, a cloaked figure ran quickly down an alley, whispering into a communicator. "It is true," the voice said, urgent and fearful. "The human has done it. The blind child can see. We must inform the council at once. Inside, however," Marcus allowed himself a single moment of peace. He placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder and said softly, "This is only the beginning. We will make it better, clearer, stronger. But you must remember, Lyra, this gift will make some afraid. Not everyone will see it as kindness. Some will call it dangerous." Lyra turned her newly opened eyes toward the window where faint starlight shone. Her vision was blurred, imperfect, but she saw it. She had never seen the stars before. She whispered in awe, "They are beautiful." Marcus followed her gaze, his jaw tightening. "Yes," he said, "but beauty often draws envy, and envy draws danger." The night stretched long, but the world outside was no longer the same. For, with one fragile device and the laughter of a child who could finally see, the universe itself had begun to tremble, and those who ruled it would not stay silent for long. Whispers across the stars. The miracle of Lyra's sight could not stay hidden for long. What began as a single spark inside a lonely workshop quickly spread like fire through dry grass. In the streets of Daynar, merchants whispered about the blind child who now laughed and pointed at the colors of their stalls. Children who once mocked her now followed her curiously, wondering if the stories were true. At first, the people thought it was rumor, a tale told by bored tongues, but when they saw the girl with their own eyes, when they saw her stumble less and smile more, the whispers turned into a storm. Every tavern, every market, every household spoke of the human engineer. Some said he had used forbidden magic. Others believed he had stolen power from the gods. And some quietly admitted the truth that frightened them most, that a single man, a stranger, had built something greater than all the combined knowledge of the council's scholars. Hope grew in the poor districts, in the hearts of those who had long been ignored. For if blindness could be healed, then what else could be changed? What else had they been told was impossible? In the high spires of the council hall, the whispers carried even faster. The counselors were beings of power, tall and regal, their voices sharp as steel. They had ruled for generations, maintaining order with strict laws. For them, weakness was a crime and suffering was destiny. They sat in their chamber of black stone and silver light. Listening to the reports brought by their spies, the cloaked messengers knelt, their words trembling as they confirmed what the council feared. "The human has built a device," one spy said. "The blind child sees again. It is no trick. I have seen it with my own eyes." A ripple of unease moved through the chamber. Counselor Razir, his scaled face gleaming beneath the light, slammed his claw against the table. "This is a threat," he hissed. "If the weak can be made strong, if the broken can be made whole, then our order crumbles. Our rule depends on hierarchy, on the belief that some are born to rule and others to suffer." Counselor Vela, tall and robed in shimmering gold, leaned forward, her voice calm but sharp. "It is worse than that. If the common people believe in this human, they may no longer believe in us. His invention could ignite rebellion." Another counselor, old and weary, spoke more softly. "Or perhaps it could be used if we control the human. If we claim his device as our own, we could strengthen our armies, reward our allies, and tighten our grip." The chamber fell into heavy silence. The choice was clear: the human was too dangerous to ignore. His invention was too powerful to allow uncontrolled. He would either serve the council or be destroyed. Orders were sent quietly across the city. Soldiers were dispatched. Cloaked agents doubled their watch, and the first steps of a silent war were taken. Back in the workshop, Marcus was unaware of the full storm that gathered. He saw only Lyra's joy as she discovered the world with new eyes. She spent hours touching objects and then staring at them, amazed that what she felt was now matched by what she saw. She laughed at the color of fruit, cried at the glow of crystals, and gasped when she first saw her reflection in a cracked piece of metal. Marcus watched her with quiet satisfaction, yet his heart carried unease. He knew too well how power attracted danger, and his device was power unlike anything the galaxy had seen. One evening, as the sun set and the streets outside glowed with faint lanterns, a knock came at the workshop door. Marcus stiffened. His tools were set aside quickly, and he motioned for Lyra to stay quiet. Slowly, he opened the door. Two strangers stood outside, dressed in fine robes that marked them as envoys of the council. Their eyes studied him with cold precision. "You are Marcus," one said, his tone flat. "The human engineer," Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, we have heard of your device," the envoy continued. "The council requests your presence. They wish to see it for themselves." Marcus's jaw tightened. He knew this was not a request but a command. Yet he also knew that refusing openly would bring the soldiers crashing down upon them. He forced a calm smile. "Tell the council I will come soon," he replied. "But the device is not ready. It still needs testing." The envoys exchanged looks, their expressions unreadable. "Do not delay," one warned. "The council grows impatient." Then they turned and left, their robes sweeping across the dusty ground. Marcus closed the door and leaned against it, his breath heavy. He turned to see Lyra staring at him with wide, frightened eyes. "They want to take it from you, don't they?" she whispered. He walked to her side and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Yes," he admitted. "They will either take it or destroy it. But I will not let them. This was made for you, Lyra, not for them." She lowered her head, her hands tightening into fists. "If they take it, will they make me blind again?" Marcus's heart ached at the question. He shook his head firmly. "No, I will never let that happen," he promised. But even as he spoke, he knew that their time was running short. The council's eyes were fixed on him now, and soon their hands would reach. Outside, in the distant stars above the city, whispers moved from one world to another. News of the humans spread to traders, smugglers, scholars, and wanderers. Each one repeated the same story, that a blind child could now see, and that it was a human who had made it so. Hope, fear, greed, and anger rippled across the galaxy, and in the quiet of his workshop, Marcus realized the truth. He had built more than a device. He had lit a spark that the universe was not ready to face. The Council's warning. The council chamber of Danar was a place designed to crush the spirit of anyone who entered it. The vast hall stretched high into the sky, its walls carved from black stone veined with silver light that pulsed like the heartbeat of the city. Enormous pillars rose toward the ceiling, each etched with ancient symbols of power. At the far end of the chamber sat the 13 counselors, their seats towering above all others. Their faces were cast in shadow, lit only by the faint glow of the council fire that burned between them. Every detail of the room screamed authority, reminding any who stood below that they were small and powerless. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, his head tilted back as he looked up at the counselors. Lyra stood beside him, her small hand gripping his coat tightly, though her visor was steady on her face and though her vision was still blurred. She refused to remove it. She needed to see. Even in this place of judgment, the guards had tried to separate them when they entered, but Marcus's voice had cut through the chamber like steel. "She stays with me." And the council had allowed it, though not without cold stares. The silence stretched until Counselor Razier leaned forward, his scaled hands curling around the arm of his seat. His voice rumbled like a blade drawn across stone. "Human Marcus," he began, "you stand accused of breaking the natural order. You have created a device that interferes with what has always been. You have made the blind see. This is not invention, it is corruption." Marcus's jaw tightened. He kept his voice calm, though anger burned in his chest. "I have given a child the gift of sight. That is not corruption. That is compassion." A low hiss echoed across the chamber as Counselor Vela rose, her golden robes shimmering. "Compassion is weakness," she declared. "We are rulers because we are strong. The blind, the weak, the broken. These are burdens meant to remain as they are. By changing that, you weaken the structure of our society. If every flaw can be corrected, then every order collapses." Lyra's voice trembled as she clutched Marcus's coat. "Why do you call it weakness to see?" she asked. Her tone was small but brave. "Why do you call kindness a crime?" The chamber rippled with whispers. Some counselors frowned, others smirked. Razier's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Child, you dare speak in this hall?" Marcus stepped in front of her protectively, his eyes hard. "She dares because she is the proof of what I have done. She can see now. You cannot silence that truth." The counselors shifted uneasily, for even they could not deny the visor glowing softly upon her face. Yet power was their weapon, and they would not surrender it easily. Counselor Vela raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Human," she said coldly. "You will surrender the device and all knowledge of its making to the council. We will decide how it is used and to whom it is given. If you resist, both you and the child will suffer the consequences." Marcus's voice thundered in reply. "No, this device was made for her, not for you. It was made to heal, not to control. I will not give it to tyrants who see compassion as weakness." Gasps filled the chamber at his defiance. The guards at the edge of the room stepped forward, weapons humming with energy. Razier's eyes burned with fury. "Seize them," he ordered. "Take the human and the child. The device will belong to the council." The guards began to advance, their armored feet striking the floor like drums of war. Lyra clutched Marcus's hand, her heart racing. "Marcus," she whispered, fear rising in her chest. "What do we do?" He looked down at her, his expression calm, though fire blazed in his eyes. "We do what humans always do," he said softly. "We fight for what is right." Before the guards reached them, Marcus pulled a small device from his coat, a human tool, simple in appearance but dangerous in the right hands. With a sharp twist, he activated it, and the floor beneath the guards erupted in a flash of light and smoke. The chamber filled with shouts as the counselors rose from their seats, their voices booming with outrage. Marcus scooped Lyra into his arms and sprinted toward the side passage he had noticed when they first entered. Smoke billowed behind them, covering their escape for a brief, "Precious moment," guards shouted, weapons fired. But Marcus moved like a man who had lived his whole life running from danger. His boots slammed against the polished stone, each step echoing in the chaos. They burst into the outer corridors of the council hall, Lyra's new vision blurred by tears and fear. But she clung to him, guiding him around obstacles she could now finally see. The irony was not lost on Marcus. The child they had called weak was now helping him survive. Behind them, the counselors' voices carried like thunder. "Find them. Bring them back alive if possible. But bring the device above all," the order was clear. The human had defied the most powerful force in the city, and now he and the girl would be hunted without mercy. As they fled into the labyrinth of alleys outside the hall, Marcus knew the truth of their situation. The council would never stop. They feared what he had created because it was more than a device. It was a symbol, proof that kindness and ingenuity could change destiny itself. And for rulers who thrived on fear and control, that was the greatest threat of all. He looked at Lyra, her visor glowing faintly in the darkness, her eyes wide but unbroken. She had been blind, helpless, abandoned. Now she was seeing the world with courage that few adults possessed. Marcus tightened his grip on her hand and whispered, "They will chase us, but we will not bow. Remember that, Lyra. No matter what comes, we will not bow." And as the city stretched out before them, filled with shadows and danger, the chase had only begun. The council's warning had been given, and their wrath would soon follow. But Marcus had no intention of surrendering. Not now. Not ever. For the universe had tried to crush the human spirit before, and it had never succeeded. The escape. The streets of Danar at night were a maze of shadows and neon glow. Tall towers loomed like silent guards, their lights reflecting across the wet stone pathways below. The hum of distant ships echoed through the air, mixed with the calls of merchants closing their stalls and the whispers of those who thrived in the city's darker corners. It was through these winding streets that Marcus and Lyra ran, the sound of their footsteps sharp against the silence. Behind them, the pursuit of the council was relentless. Armored soldiers spread across alleys and rooftops, their scanners glowing like predator eyes in the dark. Marcus moved with the precision of a man who had spent his life in places where danger waited behind every door. His eyes scanned ahead, calculating paths, measuring distance. He gripped Lyra's hand tightly, guiding her through twisting corridors and narrow bridges. Lyra's breathing was fast, her heart racing. But even in her fear, she refused to stumble. For the first time, she could see the world she once felt only with her hands. And though her vision was blurred, her courage burned brighter than ever. The council soldiers closed in quickly, their metallic boots echoing through the alleys. Energy weapons lit the air with bright flashes. Bolts slamming into walls and scattering shards of stone, Marcus ducked low, pulling Lyra into a narrow passage between two leaning towers. The glow of their pursuers lit the walls around them. But Marcus pushed forward, his mind already calculating the risks. They reached a marketplace that had fallen silent for the night. The stalls shuddered, the air heavy with the smell of spices and metal. Marcus pulled Lyra behind a stack of crates and crouched low. Listening, the sounds of boots and shouts grew closer. Soldiers spread through the square, searching every corner. Scanning for life signs, Marcus held his breath. Pressing a hand gently over Lyra's trembling fingers, she looked up at him, her visor glowing faintly in the darkness. "Her eyes wide but steady, Marcus," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They will find us." He shook his head slowly, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Not if we keep moving. Trust me, Lyra, we will make it out." When the soldiers drew closer, Marcus activated a small device from his belt. A faint pulse of energy rippled outward, and for a moment the soldiers' scanners flickered and went dark. Confusion spread among them as they cursed and tapped at their equipment. Marcus seized the chance, lifting Lyra into his arms and slipping through the shadows toward the far end of the square. Each step was a gamble, each breath a risk, but he moved with silent precision until the sounds of pursuit faded once more into the night. They reached the industrial district where massive pipes ran across buildings like veins of iron. Steam hissed from vents, and the air was filled with a low rumble of machinery. Here, the shadows were deeper, the noise louder. Marcus set Lyra down and guided her across a narrow walkway suspended high above the ground. The metal creaked beneath their weight, and she gripped the railing tightly, her eyes fixed on the glowing lights below. For the first time, she saw the world not just as touch and sound, but as shapes and distance. And though it frightened her, she followed Marcus without hesitation. Suddenly, a voice rang out above the roar of the machinery. "There they are!" Soldiers appeared on the catwalks behind them, energy weapons raised. Marcus cursed under his breath and pulled Lyra forward. The walkway shook as bolts of energy struck its sides, sparks showering down into the abyss. The metal groaned as cracks spread across its joints. Lyra stumbled, her hand slipping from the railing, but Marcus caught her before she fell, his arms tightening around her as he pushed them onward. They leapt from the collapsing walkway onto a lower platform. Landing hard, pain shot through Marcus's legs, but he forced himself up, pulling Lyra with him. The soldiers above shouted, some beginning to climb down, but Marcus was already moving, weaving through pipes and stairways until they reached a large drainage tunnel. Its mouth yawned open like a dark maw, and without hesitation, Marcus led them inside. The tunnel was damp, the air filled with the stench of water and rust. Their footsteps splashed through shallow streams as they ran. The sounds of pursuit echoed behind them, distorted by the tunnel walls. Lyra clung to Marcus's arm, her breath sharp and fast. "Marcus," she said between gasps, "where are we going?" "To the spaceport," he answered quickly. "If we can reach my ship, we can get off this planet before the Council locks it down. Once we are in the stars, they cannot control us so easily." Hope flickered in her chest, though fear still pressed heavily on her. The thought of leaving everything she had known behind was terrifying. But she trusted him, more than she had ever trusted anyone. They emerged from the tunnels into the outskirts of the city, where the glow of the spaceport lights filled the sky like false dawn. Ships of every shape and size towered above docking platforms, their engines pulsing with power. The area was alive with noise, merchants, travelers, guards, but beneath it all, Marcus felt the heavy presence of the Council's soldiers already spreading through the port, waiting, watching. He pulled Lyra close and whispered, "Stay near me. No matter what happens, do not let go of my hand." She nodded quickly, her grip tightening as if her life depended on it. Together, they stepped into the chaos of the spaceport, blending with the crowd as best they could. But even as they moved, Marcus knew their escape would not be simple. The Council's reach was vast, and their eyes were everywhere. The question was not whether they would be found. It was whether they could survive long enough to take flight. And so, in the heart of the galaxy's busiest port, among the noise of ships and the shadows of hunters, the true test of their escape was about to begin. The universe wasn't ready. The spaceport of Danar was a storm of noise and light. Towering ships stood like sleeping beasts, their engines rumbling, their hulls glowing faintly under the neon lamps of the docking stations. The air was heavy with the smell of fuel and ozone. Voices shouted from every direction, merchants bargaining, pilots arguing, guards shouting orders. Yet beneath the chaos was a quiet tension, for the Council's soldiers were already there, hidden among the crowd, their eyes scanning every face, their hands resting on the hilts of their weapons. They were waiting for Marcus and the girl, and Marcus knew it. He kept Lyra close. Her small hand locked in his, her visor glowed softly, her new vision blurred but real. Her heart pounded with both terror and wonder. For though danger pressed in from every side, she could not stop staring at the stars through the open sky lanes above. Ships rose into the void like arrows of fire, leaving trails that sparkled in the sky. For the first time in her life, she saw the universe not as whispers or stories, but with her own eyes. And even in her fear, she smiled. Marcus guided her carefully through the crowd, his eyes sharp, his movement steady. He had lived enough years among dangerous worlds to know how to blend, how to move like one of the many. But he also knew that the Council's net was closing fast. His ship was not far now, a modest freighter built for survival rather than speed, but between him and safety stood rows of armored soldiers spreading across the docking bay. Their weapons glowed faintly as they tightened the circle. "Marcus?" Lyra whispered, her voice trembling as she saw the soldiers blocking the path. "They are here. They will take us." He knelt quickly, meeting her frightened gaze. His hand rested gently on her shoulder, his voice low and unshaken. "Listen to me, Lyra. They cannot take what you already are. You have sight now, you have strength. They can try to take the device, but they cannot erase the truth. You are proof that change is possible." Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered back, "But they will hurt you. Marcus smiled faintly, though his eyes were fierce. "Then let them try," he said. The soldiers advanced, their voices loud and sharp. "Surrender, human, surrender the child and the device. You cannot escape." The crowd began to scatter, travelers rushing away, merchants shutting their stalls. Fear spread quickly, for no one wished to be caught between the council and defiance. Within moments, the docking bay was nearly empty, leaving Marcus and Lyra standing at the center as the soldiers formed their circle. Marcus stood tall, his body shielding the girl. His voice rang out strong. "You fear this child because she can see. You fear me because I gave her that sight, but sight is not a weapon. It is hope, and hope cannot be chained." The soldiers did not answer with words. They raised their weapons, the humming sound of energy charging filling the bay. It seemed like the end. Yet before the first bolt could be fired, a murmur began from the edges of the crowd that had not fully fled. One voice, then another, whispering, then speaking louder. "She can see," someone said. "It is true. The blind child can see," others echoed. "The human gave her sight. He did the impossible. He brought a miracle." The whispers grew into shouts, and soon the crowd that had scattered began to return. Dozens of eyes turned toward the child standing in the glow of her visor. Hundreds of voices rose, carrying words the council had long feared. "If she can see, then we can too. If she can change, then so can we," the soldiers faltered, their circle breaking as the crowd pressed forward, not with violence, but with unity. Lyra, trembling but brave, stepped out from behind Marcus. She raised her hands, her eyes glistening, her voice clear though small. "I was blind," she said. "They said I was broken. They said I was cursed. But now I see, because of him, because of kindness, do not fear what can heal. Do not fear what can give life." Her words struck the air like lightning. The crowd erupted, their voices shaking the walls of the port. Soldiers hesitated, their hands trembling on their weapons. For the first time in years, the will of the people outweighed the commands of the council. The commanding officer snarled and shouted, "Silence! Arrest them!" But his own men looked uneasy, some lowering their weapons. The tide was shifting, and Marcus knew it. He took Lyra's hand again and began moving toward his ship. The crowd parted for them, forming a path. Their voices grew louder, chants rising, "Let them go! Let them go!" With every step, Marcus felt the weight of history pressing upon them. This was more than escape now. This was rebellion. This was the beginning of something far larger than either of them. And though he did not seek to be a symbol, he knew that he already was. They reached the ship. Its ramp lowering with a hiss, Marcus guided Lyra inside as the crowd surged forward, blocking the soldiers who still hesitated. The engines roared to life, and the freighter lifted from the dock. Soldiers shouted, weapons fired, but the blasts were lost in the deafening cheer of the people. The ship soared upward, breaking free of the port, rising into the starlit sky inside the cabin. Lyra pressed her face to the window, her blurred eyes wide as the city fell away, the planet shrinking below, and the endless stars stretched before her like a sea of fire. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "It is so beautiful." Marcus stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. His voice was quiet but steady. "Yes, it is. But remember this, Lyra. They were never ready for you to see. They were never ready for what we could build together. The universe wasn't ready for the truth, but now it must face it." And as the ship vanished into the depths of space, the spark they carried burned brighter than ever, a spark that no council, no empire, no tyrant could extinguish, for one act of kindness had grown into something far greater, and the universe would never be the same again.